petitioners ready to call their next witness?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Rothschild. The petitioner is called Dr. Barrett.
Has everyone in the room signed the sign-in sheet yet? Okay, if you could make, thank you.
Sign-in sheet?
Good morning, Dr. Baird. Good morning. I will remind you that you are still under oath. Mr. Hayden.
Thank you, Ms. Rothschild. Good morning, Dr. Barrett.
Hello.
You have a copy of your affidavit dated June 4, 2019 in front of you?
I do.
There was testimony this morning with Mr. Keith about a meeting on the morning of Monday, May 13, 2019 at 10:15 a.m. Did you hear that testimony?
I did.
And the meeting involved attorneys Outman, Fallon, and Karen, as well as Glenn Pacheco. Did you hear that testimony?
I did.
And Mr. Keith was uncertain whether you participated in the meeting, although his affidavit swore under the pains and penalties of perjury that you did attend that meeting.
I did attend the meeting, however, I was not there at the beginning of the meeting, so I missed that discussion.
Okay. So you attended a meeting on May 13, 2019, and prior to your arrival at the meeting, there was discussion of the alpha analytical data?
That's my understanding from my colleagues.
And when did you first learn that the meeting that you attended included discussion of the alpha analytical data before you arrived?
When the affidavits were written,
What time was the meeting scheduled for on Monday, May 13th?
it was scheduled from 10 to 12,
And what time did you arrive?
11, 10, something like that.
And what initially called your attention to the meeting?
The
How did you learn about the meeting?
council scheduled the meeting for preparation for this hearing.
And when when did you first learn about the meeting?
I don't know. When an email was sent around scheduling the meeting,
When the email was sent around scheduling the meeting, was there an agenda listed?
it was just preparation for the hearing.
Was there any reference to the production of data from Alpha Analytical in the email scheduling the meeting?
No.
When you arrived sometime after 11 a.m. at this meeting on Monday, May 13th, did anyone catch you up on what you had missed before you arrived?
No.
At any point prior to the morning of May 16, 2019, did you learn that additional data from Alpha Analytical had been received by the department?
I saw the spreadsheet from the data on May 14th.
And how did you come to see the spreadsheet?
I received a call from Glenn Keith, and he suggested that I look at it.
Why did he suggest you look at it?
Because it was the new data from Alpha. And I had been involved with the DHIA.
What was your role in reviewing this data?
I just took a quick look at it that day, and just to see what was there, but I didn't do any specific analysis on the data at that point in time.
What time of day on May 14th did you conduct this review?
Middle of the afternoon, maybe?
And how long did you spend looking at the data?
I have no idea.
Approximately.
10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, something.
And did you recognize in your initial review of the alpha analytical data on May 14 of 2019 that additional VOCs were included in the report that were not contained in Alpha Analytical's prior reports?
I guess yes, because the context of receiving the call and looking at the data.
And did you take notes of your review on May 14, 2019?
No,
Why not?
I just I hadn't been instructed to make any particular review of the data. I was made aware of the data. I looked at the data, didn't see anything that called out to me that was a particular issue from the toxicological aspect of the data, and I waited to proceed to do more work until I knew what was needed.
Did you observe the reporting of 1,3-butadiene?
I did.
And you know that 1,3-butadiene is a known human carcinogen?
I do.
And that 1,3-butadiene was not reported in the earlier alpha analytical data?
Yes.
Did you spend any additional time after May 14 of 2019 reviewing the new documentation produced by Alpha Analytica?
I did.
When was that?
May 20th.
And what was the context of that review?
I wanted to look at that data in the context of our AALs. Our AAL for 1,3-butadiene is older, so I went to look for additional information to see what was available now that might inform a view on our AAL.
As far as the existing AAL limits, you agree that the test results in the new alpha analytical data for 1,3-butadiene exceed the department's AALs?
Correct.
In between May 14th, when you first reviewed the new alpha analytical data, and May 20th, when you went back to look at the data again, did you have any occasion to review any of the alpha analytical data between those two dates?
I don't know. 3 of those days were spent in this room, and 2 of those days were the weekend, which I did not work on that data, so.
And following Mr. Keith calling you on May 14th, 2019 to ask you to review the new alpha analytical data, and the 10 to 30 minutes that you spent during the middle of the afternoon on May 14th looking at that data, did you have a follow-up conversation with anyone at the department about your initial impressions?
I don't think so. Or I might have, I really don't know.
So the only reason you looked at the data was because Mr. Keith asked you to, correct?
Yes, he made me aware of it and asked me to look at it.
And after you looked at it, are you uncertain if you ever followed back up with him to discuss what you saw?
I know there were conversations, but there are many different conversations that were going on, and I don't remember any specific conversation about that. Yeah.
If I could turn your attention to the affidavit that you signed, would you read the last full paragraph?
The earliest date on which I first knew of Mass DEP's request to Alpha Analytical for the additional data was the morning of May 16th at a meeting with counsel and other department witnesses before the adjudicatory hearing commenced.
Based on your testimony that you reviewed the Alpha Analytical data 2 days earlier on May 14, 2019, is that paragraph incorrect as concerns the date?
It is not. I was not aware of the process by which the data came to the department. So the 16th was the first day that I knew that there had been a specific request and there had been a process to acquire that data.
So you had previously reviewed the original Alpha Analytical data, correct?
Yes.
And you agree that the data you reviewed on May 14, 2019 was not included in that original Alpha Analytical data?
Yes.
Did it strike you as odd that you were reviewing new data from Alpha Analytical for the first time the day before the adjudicatory hearing in this proceeding began?
I didn't really think that much about it. It was just data that I was asked to look at. I didn't think about it in the context of the hearing or other aspects of
Did you ask anyone where the data came from?
it. I did not.
Did you ask anyone why you hadn't been provided with the data earlier?
I did not.
During the meeting on May 16, 2019, referenced in your affidavit, what was discussed?
There were discussions about releasing the data,
Objection.
sharing it.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but was counsel present at the meeting? This witness is not an attorney. I just want to make sure she doesn't knowingly reveal attorney-client communications in response to conversations in that meeting.
If you can limit your answer to discussions not with counsel in that meeting, if that's possible.
They couldn't hear what you said.
Okay, I asked her if she could limit her answer to conversations within that meeting that did not include direct conversations with counsel. I'm not looking, I do not want you to reveal attorney-client privileged information, but there were other people at that meeting. So if you could reread the question, please.
During the meeting on May 16, 2019, referenced in your affidavit, what was discussed?
Relating to the data.
Relating to the data and not with regard to legal advice.
At that meeting, I learned from Glenn Keith that this data had been requested and that there was a process that had been going on, conversations with Mary Moran, and that was the first that I knew that there had been this process to request the information.
Dr. Barrett, if you could look at Exhibit 29 in front of you. Have you seen this document before?
Hypno.
Are you familiar with an initial task order submitted to a laboratory for evaluation of air samples?
I am not.
Did you hear Mr. Keith's testimony earlier about the distinction between a TO15 SIM EPA test and a TO15 SIM CAM test?
I did.
Are you familiar with those tests?
Not only just the name.
Are you familiar with one test requesting 40 volatile organic compounds while the other test requests 64 volatile organic compounds?
Only since I've been part of this proceeding, these conversations.
Is the document that was not marked as an exhibit but was shown to Mr. Keith dated August 27, 2018 in front of you?
It is not.
Mr. Hayden, are you referring to the draft mock-up of possible images?
Yes, Ms. Rothschild.
Just a moment.
There were two earlier. I'm not sure where the other went.
I think Mr. Keith took it with him.
Could we, if it would help you, Ms. Rothschild, could we ask Mr. Keith to return it so that you can review it?
Yes, Mr. Keith, do you still have that? Okay, then, in order not to wait, you can stay here. Dr. Baird can review that.
Dr. Baird, do you recognize this document?
I do.
Mr. Keith testified earlier that you prepared it.
I did.
What was the context of your preparation of this document?
This is during the drafting of the health impact assessment report, and we're discussing what we wanted to present and how we wanted to present it, and there have been conversations with Mass Department of Public Health and the people who are working on the HIA, and this was just to serve as a starting point for the report so that people could comment and decide and have discussions about how to best communicate the information.
If I could turn your attention to page 6 of the document.
And objection, I don't mean to, when I said objection to this before, I think this is an HIA document. Just note that.
Understood, and I'm noting the prior conversation and the ruling on that. The document's not coming out. I'm going to let Mr. Hayden ask his question. We'll see where it goes. But I am going to make it clear, we're not reviewing the HIA. I can't say this often enough. The HIA is not subject to review. I understand the petitioners have issues with it, but I'm going to let him ask the question and we'll see where it goes.
Thank you. Are you on page 6, Dr. Baird?
I am.
Under the headings 2 and A, there's a paragraph that begins with Mass DEP will assess.
Yes.
Will you read that first sentence for us, please?
Sure. Mass DEP will assess baseline air quality conditions by collecting monitoring data for 40 volatile organic compounds, VOC, including benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene, and formaldehyde in the study area, and comparing the results to statewide levels and Mass DEP ambient air guidelines.
As the person who prepared this document, where did you obtain that information?
I am not exactly sure. I knew which chemicals were being measured and that they were focused on benzene, toluene, xylene, and formaldehyde. I might have counted up the number of chemicals on the list. I would say, just looking at this, it's possible that I got that information from other people and cut and pasted into the document because the fonts are different for parts of the sentences and the footnotes. So some of the details other people might have contributed. I can't say at this point in time.
When you prepared this document, did you have an understanding that a total count of 40 volatile organic compounds lined up with a TO15 SIM CAM test, not a TO15 SIM EPA test?
I did not. I am not an air monitoring specialist. I'm a toxicologist, so I use the information that's provided.
And the types of VOCs that were tested for was important in your role, correct?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Sure, you said a moment ago you're a toxicologist, correct?
Yes.
So, setting aside the collection protocol, your role was to actually review and analyze the results of the air sample testing, correct?
Correct.
And on page 8 of this document, do you see in the middle under air toxic results?
I do.
Will you read those two lines for us, please?
Air toxics results show rate of decline of model concentrations from the highest model concentration What is the concentration of the first buildings off-site at park, other key places in the community? Consider plotting the areas where the cancer risk contribution from the 3 greatest 8 contributors to cancer risk combined is greater than 1 in a million. I.e., sum of model cancer risk, benzene formaldehyde, 1,3-butadiene, equals model cancer risk of benzene and divided by the AL of benzene, model concentration of formaldehyde, divided by the AL for formaldehyde, and the model concentration of 1,3-butadiene divided by the AL for 1,3-butadiene.
Thank you. And is that more squarely within your purview as the toxicologist drafting this document than the type of testing that was done?
Yes.
And so when you prepared this document, it was important for you to have a plan for how to utilize the air toxics results, correct?
Right? Can I clarify that this?
I'm sure your attorney will offer you the opportunity to clarify, but my question, the answer is correct.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Could we have that question right back, please?
So when you prepared this document, it was important for you to have a plan for how to utilize the air toxic results, correct?
Yes.
And in this August 27, 2018 document that you prepared, you flagged 3 specific air toxics, namely benzene, formaldehyde, and 1,3-butadiene, correct?
Yes.
And in the alpha analytical data that you initially received, there were no test results for 1,3-butadiene, correct?
That's correct.
In addition to 1,3-butadiene, Dr. Baird, the newly produced alpha analytical data included concentrations of methanol that exceeded the department's TELs. Is that correct?
I believe that was in the one sample that was considered invalid
Why was it considered invalid?
because it was, the can was leaking, it didn't hold the proper vacuum, and was only open for 4 minutes instead of 24 hours. That is how it was reported to me.
And who reported that to you?
Glenn Keith.
When was that reported to you?
I can't remember exactly when. Certainly before last Thursday, and probably before then as well. I definitely became, sorry. Definitely became aware of it when we got your testimony, your question about that. And I might have been aware of that beforehand, but I don't remember specifically.
With regard to carbon disulfide, do you agree that the alpha analytical data includes test results for carbon disulfide that exceed the department's TELs?
I do, again, that was from that invalid can. It does not represent ambient air concentration.
When did you first learn that?
This would have been the same time, the same conversation.
Have you had occasion to review the air sampling data that was returned from the Rhode Island Department of Public Health?
Objection, I think again we're straying from alpha data into other data that's not relevant to what you're here for today.
Well, I'm gonna allow it because part of the reason we're here was my determination that the petitioners did not have a full and fair opportunity to cross-examine the department's witnesses. And I think this is a question that Mr. Hayden probably would have asked back in May had he had the new data. So I'm gonna allow the question.
So the answer is yes, I was able to look at the alpha data. I mean, the new Rhode Island data and evaluate it.
And when did you do that?
around the 20th of May.
And what was the context for your review of that data?
I was very curious what those results would be. And so I looked at them in comparison to the same day that samples were taken in Boston and Lynn.
So the department initially received the Rhode Island data on December 26th of 2018. Are you aware of that?
No, I was not aware. I mean, I'm aware because of the conversations, but I was not aware in December.
And when did you first become aware that the department had received any data from Rhode Island collected on the proposed compressor station site?
When I read the document, I think it was Frank Singleton's affidavit that included an image of that, and then I didn't know where it came from, and then we had discussions, and I learned where that data was, where the source of that data was.
Is there another toxicologist at the department that has assisted you with your review in these proceedings?
No,
So when the original alpha analytical data was received by the department, you were asked to review it, correct?
yes,
And when the new alpha analytical data was received by the department, you were asked on May 14th by Glenn Keith to review it, correct?
yes,
And you weren't told at that time that the genesis of that additional alpha analytical data. Is that your testimony?
that is my testimony.
And despite the fact that the department received air sampling data from the Rhode Island Department of Public Health in December of 2018, you did not seek to review any of that Rhode Island air sampling data until you read Mr. Singleton's testimony and learned that it existed?
I did not know it existed until Mr. Singleton, I read Mr. Singleton's testimony.
So fair to say that nobody at the department told you that the Rhode Island data existed before you read Mr. Singleton's testimony?
Yes,
And there's no other toxicologist that was informed of the existence of the Rhode Island data besides yourself, correct?
that's correct.
And when you learned of the existence of the Rhode Island data by reading Mr. Singleton's testimony, you were interested in reviewing its results, correct?
Yes,
It was important to you.
yes.
If I could just have a moment, Ms. Rothschild.
You may.
Mr. Rothschild, understanding there have been perhaps multiple rulings on the same question, because this witness authored the document that we've reviewed dated August 27, 2018, entitled Draft Mock-up of Possible Images for HIA Air Quality, I would renew our offer of this document as an exhibit, even if the entirety of the document is redacted, other than those two sections that I reviewed with the witness pertaining to the collection of monitoring data for 40 volatile organic compounds and her, Dr. Baird's explanation of the plan that she had for air toxics results, and then specifically the VOCs, benzene, formaldehyde, and 1,3-butadiene, with the remainder of the document to be redacted.
The same objection, and I would note that the department had the relevant portions of this draft document read into the record, so it is per se in the record already. The document as a whole has to do with the HIA, which, again, my limited understanding of how what we're doing here today is that we're looking at the new alpha data. When did the department know about it? What the original genesis of what the new alpha data was, and what we did with that data once we had it. this is confusing for the record, and for the important parts, which I understand the petitioner wants, they're read into the record. So I think the document is relevant, and the relevant portions that was allowed by your ruling are already in the record.
And I'm going to agree with the department on this. I think that the pertinent parts and the parts that relate to air toxics and air toxic modeling are in the department. The document is out, but the relevant portions are in. And I'm doing this recognizing two things. The HIA, again, not subject to review, but there is a legitimate dispute among the parties about air toxics and the use of the background data in the department, how the department deals with air toxics and does its evaluations. So for that purpose, I think those paragraphs that have been read in are relevant, and they will be given appropriate weight as I'm reviewing everything. But if you're familiar, if you've read all the closing briefs, you're familiar, and all the initial memos, you're familiar with what the arguments petitioners are making are. So for that purpose, the document is not in, but the portions that have been read in must remain.
Thank you. Dr. Barrett, just to close the loop on this document line of questions, could you read for us the top line on the first page?
Draft. Draft mock-up of possible images for HIA air quality 2018-08-27.
And just so we're clear on the
note-
date, is that August 27, 2018?
Yes,
And that date is accurate?
yes,
And you were the author of this document?
yes.
No further questions.
Mr. Mieres?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If I could call your attention to this draft document that we've been talking about on that same page 8,
Which page?
that same page 8,
8, yes.
under heading C,
Yes.
the following sentence appears: Mass DEP will assess the cumulative exposure from the proposed compressor station by comparing the modeled emissions concentrations from the air dispersion modeling plus existing background concentrations to statewide levels of PM 2.5, NO2, benzene, formaldehyde, and Mass DEP ambient air guidelines. You see that?
I do.
Objection, and I apologize, Councilman, for interrupting. The same objection as before. This document is an HIA document. It doesn't, in particular, this paragraph doesn't seem to relate to the new alpha data.
Mr. Mieres?
Well, this witness is the author of this document. I was going to ask her if that is in fact what she understood Mass DEP would be doing at that time. And then I was going to follow that up with some questions about the about how the new data might affect what she wrote here.
Okay, well, with regard to the HIA or with regard to the air quality plan approval?
With regard to the air quality plan approval, of course.
Okay. I'm going to overrule the objection, subject to renewal based on what the questions.
Okay, well, let's start. Did I read the sentence correctly?
Yes.
And did you write that sentence?
Yes.
And was it, at the time that you wrote that sentence, was it your expectation that Mass DEP would indeed assess the cumulative exposure from the proposed compressor station by comparing the model emissions concentrations from the air dispersion modeling plus existing background concentrations?
Yes, and we did in the HIA.
Okay. And when you learned about the existence of the additional alpha data, did it cause you to rethink that approach?
No.
Okay. Did it cause you to think that maybe perhaps additional chemicals ought to be included in that approach?
1,3-butadiene was the only chemical of potential concern among additions to that list from the new alpha data.
That's right. In fact, it's specifically mentioned on this page, right?
Up earlier, yes.
Yes.
Because then in the context of thinking about the model concentrations.
Okay.
And you'll remember that the 1,3-butadiene is less than 9% of the AAL, the model, maximum model concentration is less than 10% of the AAL.
Sounds like you, in fact, did think about whether or not it would be necessary to add 1,3-butadiene to your analysis. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions.
Mr. Goldberg?
Thank you. Ms. Beard, again, let's look at page 8 of the August 2018 draft. And will not reread it, but the sentences under the air toxics result in the middle of the page.
Yes,
So, and did you draft this section?
I did.
And you did mention in this section 1,3-butadiene?
I did.
All right. Now, did you, when you reviewed the data, the alpha data that was initially received with the 40 VOCs, did you notice that there was no data there for 1,3-butadiene?
I didn't, I don't think so. This
Right.
This equation that I have here is the sum of the modeled cancer risk. So using those concentrations from the air dispersion modeling and estimating what the potential contribution would be from the facility. So it doesn't refer to what the existing ambient air concentrations are.
So this doesn't refer to what would have been in the alpha data because that was ambient air.
Correct.
I have no further questions.
I do have one follow-up line.
Does the department want to do redirect before Mr. Hayden asks?
Let's see, I'd like to hear the question first. Thank you.
Mr. Hayden?
Thank you. Dr. Baird, you testified a moment ago in response to Mr. Miara's questions that the department did conduct air toxics modeling plus existing background information, correct?
Yes.
But that existing background information was not site-specific, correct?
It was taken from the Boston area, yes.
It was not taken from Wayman.
It was not from Wayman. However,
Can I ask? It was not taken from the Rhode Island?
Objection, the witness hadn't finished her answer.
Well, I think it was a yes or no, and she answered yes, or she, so
whatever I said.
she answered the question.
The background information for air toxics was not taken from the canister collected by the facility next to the proposed compressor station site that was sent to the Rhode Island Board of Health for analysis, correct?
That is correct.
And the background concentrations of air toxics were not taken from any of the alpha analytical data collected at the proposed compressor station site.
That is correct.
And drawing your attention to page 8 of the August 27, 2018 mock-up of possible images for HIA air quality, the background information for air toxics did not include first buildings off-site, at park, or other key places in the community as reflected in your language, correct?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Sure.
Remember,
Rebecca?
And drawing your attention to page 8 of the August 27, 2018 mock-up of possible images for HIA air quality, the background information for air toxics did not include first buildings off-site at park or other key places in the community as reflected in your language, correct?
So you're asking about the background data that I considered in the cumulative risk portion. Did that background data come from the park or the first buildings off-site?
Correct.
It did not.
No further questions.
Mr. Fallon, any
thank,
redirect?
thank you, no redirect, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Baird.
Thank you.
I think it's